Welcome to another episode of the Old Lady Hour with Lorrie and Sheryl. And we're here today with our friend Rachel Dobson. And she doesn't really have like anything to promote at the moment, but she's working on several writing projects, which we'll get to at some point. We'll come back with another interview when they're finished. But anyway, we wanted to, she's our friend. We have this thing that we call a writers group, and Rachel and Sheryl are actually writing. I'm pretty much just like thinking about it. So she's here after the writers group, and we just thought it'd be fun to have a conversation about all kinds of things that we talk about. So sit back and relax and listen to all the fascinating things that we say. And Sheryl?
I would like to mention to folks that we are working with a different microphone setup today. So if this sounds a little bit weird, it's because I'm a little out of sorts today.
Uh-oh, okay.
Just hang in there.
We'll try. Should we project more?
It seems to be picking up okay.
Okay. So Rachel, you are our first guest that we realized that it was born in the South.
Woo-hoo.
Oh, yeah, right. Yes, I was born in Northwest Arkansas, and I grew up in Alabama. And I just counted because Sheryl and I were counting, and I've only spent 11 years outside of the South.
So that, okay.
Sheryl has spent 38.4% of her life in the South.
And
Okay.
I can't do fractions and percentages, so.
Well, I have lived here since I've been 25, and I'm now 64, so that is a long time. And prior to that, the 2 years before that, we were in West Virginia, which is not really the South. I thought it was. So when I was growing up in upstate New York, almost on the Canadian border, I thought when we'd go to Pennsylvania and we'd see the signs for their billboards for Stuckies, the pecan logs.
Yep. My mom loves Stuckies.
I thought we were in the South, in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that might be one of the tests is, do you say pecan or pecan?
Well, in New York I said pecan, and now I say pecan.
And everybody thinks that's kind of like I don't know. I've heard somebody has said that's the snooty way to say pecan. I'm like, I never thought of it. It's just the way you say it.
Right. It's not snooty. It's just the way you say it. So, what the other thing we have in common is we're all similar ages. So
yes, we're all about almost the same age. I think I might be the oldest.
You're older by a couple months.
Okay.
Then me, then Lorrie's the baby.
I'm the baby here. So, not that it matters, but it's just kind of fun because we are the Old Lady Hour.
Yes.
And I feel like for some people that some of our guests, they're younger and they're aspiring to be old ladies.
Yes.
It is an aspirational,
Yes.
right. So you just wish you were. You're not there yet.
And I was thinking, what am I here to promote? And it is really promoting retirement.
Okay, so
and having your own time to do the work that you've been waiting to do for years.
Okay, well, let's just go right into that. I think, but prior to that, let's do a little background.
Yeah.
So we have things in common that are kind of interesting. We think. So Rachel ended up, tell us where you went to college.
So I went to Smith, and which is a women's college in Northampton, in Western Mass, and had a little bit of a culture shock, although I had spent couple of years in Europe off and on. I didn't think of myself as a Southerner until I went to Massachusetts. And I came back home, and then I met Lorrie in 1980.
Well, but prior to that,
jumping ahead too far?
No. When were you in Maine?
Oh, and then that's right. And then I lived in Maine for about 4 years after I graduated.
And so the funny thing about that is Sheryl was in Maine. So
and Lorrie was at Smith.
Yeah, I was at Smith just like.
But we didn't know each other, and I didn't know Sheryl in Maine.
Yeah, and I think when were you in Maine?
I was in Maine from 1982 until about 1985.
So I was there the entire time you were there, I think. Well, I may have showed up in 83, but I was there until 90.
So it's kind of funny to think sometimes about how we probably crossed by each other. We probably saw each other on the street, but we didn't meet until much later.
And when I was right before I moved permanently to Maine, I was hitchhiking with somebody. I was hitchhiking to Maine, and somebody from Birmingham picked us up, who I knew.
Oh my God!
And I won't say who it is.
Okay.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I mean, hitchhiking for our younger folks, we used to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, for younger folks.
Yeah. I mean, and I remember when I first started driving, I picked up hitchhikers all the time because it was like, it was,
Yeah.
and then all the movies came out about all the
Right.
like, the
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
I
Serial-
hitchhiked once,
serial
and I
killers.
picked up a hitchhiker once.
That
Yeah.
was probably the tail. 82 was about the tail end of the time where it was safe
it was
to do
getting well, and it was just like I think fewer people had cars, and so it was like sure that's how people
Yeah.
got around, especially younger people.
And Maine has always been a little bit behind and a little bit safer, generally.
But I mean,
A
hitchhiking.
UPS driver picked me up.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, hitchhiking was kind of a thing. So just for our younger audience
Yeah, that's
to like, yeah. And it wasn't only for the,
It happened a lot in the 60s and 70s.
right. Yeah. It was just how people got around.
Yeah, we were kind of on the late end of the whole.
That's right. So yeah, so you graduated in 82 from Smith. I graduated in 83. I moved here in 86, and I think I met you the year that we moved here.
Yeah, I met you at the Renaissance Gallery, and I had heard about you.
I think we met before that.
Oh,
So
that's right.
we
And I
had
don't
the first time
remember
I
that.
met you because someone said you were to Smith, and we were at a meeting. I think it was in Gay Lake's attic, second floor for People for Peace. Do you remember
Oh.
this?
I did go to some People for Peace meetings.
Is that, do I have the right name? The
Oh, Gay Burke.
Gay Burke. I don't know why I said Gay.
Yeah.
Gay Burke.
Gay M. Lake was a real estate person.
Oh, okay, that's it. I was just it was the name.
Cottondown.
Okay.
It's just his-
Gay Burke was a photography professor.
Yeah, Gay,
And
yeah.
she would host in her little bungalow house.
Mm-hmm.
She would host a kind of an activist group named People for Peace, and I think that's where we met. And I was so excited because I didn't know anyone here, and so I was really enthusiastic. And Rachel, you're a self-described introvert, so I'm sure I scared her away for a while.
Rachel is shaking her head.
Yes, that's right, that's right. I tend to be very enthusiastic and outgoing especially when I'm like, look, we went to the same place. But anyway, but we've had
Yeah,
fun since
I remember
then.
going to Gay's for the meeting, for at least one meeting. I may have been several, but I have a clear memory of you in the Renaissance Gallery.
Okay.
Yeah. and
Okay.
that was,
I don't
and
remember
think
that as much.
That was probably when it was all kind of clicked. Well, you were being a hostess, you know.
Oh, okay,
so,
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That probably.
So the Renaissance Gallery was, again, for our viewers, our listeners. There are millions at this point.
Yes, there are.
It was the first venture I had in an art gallery. It was in downtown Northport, and I was there with two other partners, Kathy Groshong and Judy Buckley, and myself, when we started that little gallery in downtown Northport. And I was just there for a few years. It went on for a number of years, but without me. Now it's a toy store, so there we are. But anyway, so Rachel, tell us a little bit about growing up here, making a change, if you want, and then you had mentioned something about how one of the conversations you have with a lot of your friends was like how to leave the South.
Yeah. Okay, so my experience in the South is somewhat unusual in that my parents were, although they're both from the South, my father's from Arkansas, my mother's from Georgia, they were faculty at University of Arkansas and then later at the University of Alabama. And so I grew up at a time when at first there was freedom of choice. I mean, this is the school system. So you had, when I was in the third and fourth grade, you could go to choose any school that you wanted to go to. And because my parents taught at the university, I went to Verner because it was right there and I could walk to their office after school. And then later we were bused in fifth and sixth grade, so that'd be about 1969, 70. yeah, we were bused to Vance Elementary and then later to Brookwood High School. So I never had a long time with a group of friends. Like I met a bunch of people,
And then you had to move
Burr,
a different.
and then
different
moved.
setting.
And actually, I went to a different.
And then you went to the Alabama School for the Fine Arts.
And then halfway through Brookwood, I went to Birmingham, and that's a public high school that you audition in an area to get in, and then it has room and board, and so I boarded there. And when I went there, it was at Birmingham Southern campus. And then we moved downtown. But that was a really good experience for me because I grew up, my parents bought a house out in the woods. And so I was pretty isolated except for school activities. And so once I got to Birmingham, I kind of like the world opened up.
You were right in the middle of the city, and you had a major there in the high school in creative writing. Is that
I
correct?
started out in
Okay.
creative writing, and then about halfway through my junior year, I switched to visual art.
Okay.
And all through that, I also played flute in the prep
Okay.
orchestra, another thing we have in common. And I hung out with the theater people because those are the people that I like the best.
That's good. And then how did you decide to go to Smith?
They gave me more of a bigger grant than Sarah Lawrence.
Okay.
I got it. I was trying to remember. There was a third college that I applied to. I applied to Smith and to Sarah Lawrence, which is in Bronxville, New York. And then I think I applied maybe to the School of Museum of Fine Arts in Boston.
Okay.
And either I got in or it was conditional or something. And,
Did people question why you wanted to go to women's college?
you know, if they did, I just blew it off. I mean, I kind of,
You didn't care.
I didn't care.
But and was it part of your?
And my mother kind of encouraged it.
Okay.
I will just interject this and say I had a whole lot of platonic boyfriends in high school, and I think, and my mother had raised me as a feminist. I mean, when I was 13, we went to see Gloria Steinem speak in Tuscaloosa, and I was raised in a particular kind of progressive way. But I think Mama wanted, I don't really know what she thought, but I think she decided she wanted me to go to Smith.
Okay, so she had something to do with
yeah.
it, which is,
And I knew I didn't want to go, I could have gone to the university for free.
sure, you wanted to get out of town,
yeah.
right? So, I was getting out of town too, although just from upstate New York to Western Mass, but still a long way by car, really
And
long
culturally-
long way by Greyhound bus, which is how I usually got there for a while. And then, actually, I'm not really even sure why I was there, because I wasn't looking for a women's college. I didn't really have any guidance. And at my high school, basically our guidance counselor was very nice, but he really encouraged people to go to the community college or like one of the state universities in New York. And I just was like looking for something farther away. I was getting recruitment flyers from a lot of places.
But you were a really good student. I had an exceptional high school experience.
Well, you did.
But I was the valedictorian in a group of people, in 34 people.
Oh, well, we do have that in common.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like, I got an incomplete in typing.
Okay.
And a C in geometry, and I was still valedictorian.
Okay, well, typing really didn't matter, as it turns out. And so, and then at Smith, you studied art, studio art.
Yeah, I was a studio art major.
And then for how long?
Which was it was kind of a break because both my parents Daddy had been an English graduate student and PhD in comparative literature, and Mama had her master's in English. So for me to go, even though Mama had been a English and art undergrad major, still there was no future in being an artist.
Okay.
And I knew it.
But you have had a career in art, which is okay. Well, and that's so you were for the UA Department of Art for how many years?
So after I decided that it was a good idea to settle down, when I was about 38, I got a job at the university at Alabama Heritage Magazine for a while and at the University Press for a while. And then I went, and most of my time was at the Department of Art and Art History. And I started out as their slide curator back in the days before everything was digitized, images, and made slides for all the art historians and kept them. It was kind of a quasi-librarian job. And then in June 2005, I took my last slide. And that was kind of like suddenly, faculty had been making their own slides and making their own images for maybe a year and a half, and then suddenly they didn't need me anymore. And but in the meantime, I started doing a newsletter just because I was bored,
And you called it?
And I called it the Loop, which
Okay.
is a loop is a little jeweler's magnifying glass,
that's right.
and it was what I used to make slides with.
And then you started doing the art roundup.
Yeah, and later I did. So I did that. I did that for
The
a
art
little more than 10 years.
the art roundup
roundup.
on social media. So a lot of people know you from that because
Yeah.
you are very comprehensive in getting all of the
Whether you wanted to be on there or not.
right on the art.
It was just a list of.
But it's like so many people were like, where do I go to find out all the information? And I would just say, yeah, go find the art roundup, get on the email list or look on Facebook. And
And I had people email me and go, Lorrie Lane told me to.
I'm like, well, there you go. Leave me alone because, it is hard to get that information out. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it was just a simple list with links.
and then I think it's interesting just to think about how the technology changes in our lifetime. And the slide thing was, I don't think people realize if you never had to make slides, and we do have some younger listeners, they have no idea what we're talking about. But sometime, come by, I have some old slides. They were a pain in the butt.
So a PowerPoint is essentially a
slideshow.
digitized, slide. That's why you call it a
But the-
slideshow, is because
Right,
it's
because
from
they were on
actual
little carousels, and you had to have a projector and
Well,
put
we-
the light through them.
I've tried to get them to make a museum, those people at the Department of Art and Art
Okay.
History, because they have all these old slide projectors where it was like you slide from
carousel.
slide
Oh.
slide, like it's a long two-piece and you put the slide in here, shove it through. While you're waiting, you put the other slide in and shove it
okay.
back through. You go back and
The
forth
really
like
old
that.
kind.
And
Sorry, folks, but you just can't see Rachel's imagination.
Sorry.
Well, we'll have Cheryl. You can put up pictures of these. There'll be pictures on that.
I could do a
Yeah.
little cartoon. from
Yeah.
it.
So, but I mean, they also
Yeah.
I remember having to tape slides of paintings that I did, but you couldn't crop them, so you had to tape around.
That's right.
Yeah, and then you had to label them correctly, and they were always very specific.
So I had
ways.
a collection of 80,000 slides.
80,000.
that I had to keep up with.
And were they of historical paintings
all
or for art history?
Yeah.
So.
yeah. A small part of them were like our graduate students and stuff. but
Okay.
Mostly they were, and they are all still sitting up there.
Wow.
The slides themselves are there. Have they
Wow.
been digitized?
Well, they didn't. We thought we were going to have to digitize them all, but by the time we got around to it, Google Images had already.
so it was too late.
Yeah, it's like, there were several places online early that you could get good digital images of paintings.
So your first job really was,
Is now obsolete.
it was taken over in a way by AI.
Exactly.
But you found other ways to stay with the job.
The good thing is I think it kind of sneaked up on me too. I mean, I knew, but I never felt afraid that I was going to lose my job. I just thought I'm going to be bored. And so I needed to do something else. So that's when I started doing the newsletter that turned into the Loop. And that lasted from 2001 till when I left. So that's like almost 25 years.
Okay.
I started in the department in 2001 and stayed until 2024. plus some.
Yeah, well, what are some changes you saw, like at the department and also at the university in that time?
Lots of changes. It's become a corporation, whereas because my past with the university goes back since we moved here in '65.
Because
I grew up here. I grew up on campus.
So because your parents were both professors.
There are good things and bad things about both systems. It was more about, in my opinion, a lot more about education. Now it's about making sure those kids have something on their resume and get a job, and that's good too. But I really wish there would go back to more of an emphasis on the humanities and getting a liberal arts education. Mm-hmm. And so,
okay,
I went to a college that had no core curriculum, and I was an art major, and I did it because I did not want to take math, and I ended up taking two writing courses, a poetry course, and one literature course, which was fine because I had read lots of stuff with my parents. It was good for me. I survived okay, but I think it's better for people to have a little bit, to be forced to take literature classes.
Broaden their horizons.
And not just to take, whatever, computer, like things that are geared for your.
Right.
I think there still are requirements like that at the university.
Yeah,
but some of them,
they just got rid of.
Oh, did they?
They just had, like, a year before I left, there was a big cleansing.
Okay.
And art department lost stuff, history lost stuff, English, everybody lost some requirements.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to keep changing. And then I just lost my mind.
That's okay.
Okay.
We could all run go get it.
Yeah, okay.
Let's go find it.
Let's go find my way. What I was going to say, then you got a master's degree at the University.
Yes, and so
and was that in history? Or?
I got two master's degrees. One in art history. I did a whole course in medieval book art studies, and then I got an MLIS in library school. So.
Okay, so that
I applied to the PhD program toward the end after I'd finished those, and I realized that what I wanted to do in the PhD program, I really would prefer not to do in the context of a department, of somebody telling me.
You really want to do your own
write
thing.
A book.
And so I feel like that's where what we have a lot in common. We call ourselves academic adjacent, where we want to do kind of academic things, but we don't want the requirements. And we really don't want someone telling us what to do.
Right.
So here we are, we're just kind of stubborn and obstinate.
Well, and and like we know a lot of the stuff, we know what to do. I think what I miss is the somebody chiming in and saying
discipline and the review.
A lot of it is having experts reading what I'm writing and giving me some tips and stuff.
I don't think that you will have any issue finding people in academia who would be willing to help you out.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm
a nobody as far as the university goes, and I already have somebody who said they would be willing to have grad students look over my stuff when I'm ready.
That's great. I think individual people.
Right, and I think that is one advantage of being in a university town is that there are so many people here who really are passionate about what they do, and they don't care, what your status is. If it's something they're interested in, they're willing at least to talk, which is really nice, and they're doing some really interesting things. So.
I have had a really interesting conversation with somebody, like a history person who. I was shocked to find out knew all about 19th century botanists. And suddenly I was having this conversation with this person of something that I thought I was the only person that knew anything about it.
Yeah, well, and let's just jump right into one of your projects now. So, that's good. And that project is, you're writing about Samuel Boykin.
Yes, Samuel Boykin is my four greats uncle. He was the brother of my four greats grandfather, and he was born probably in Georgia in 1786 and lived until 1848 and was a contributor to some big botanists and also a conchologist who people in the field would have heard of. John Torrey was the New York State botanist and then started the Torrey Herbarium, which became the New York Botanical Gardens Herbarium. I mean, it's like that's where all his stuff is now.
Okay.
So my ancestor Samuel would collect plants. This was in around middle Georgia and then in West Georgia, or in the Columbus area and south of and in Russell County, which is Alabama. Send them, pack them up in sheets and press them and mail them to John Torrey or to other people. He sent them to Stephen Elliott, who also wrote both these people, Stephen Elliott and John Torrey, wrote books. And so the reason that I know that Boykin did this is because he's been published. His specimens have been published in there. So, but very little has been done about him, and because he's my ancestor, I was like, oh, okay, maybe I need to do this.
Right, and so I think part of it is, first of all, we just assumed things got named and classified. I don't know, they just were there. But it actually was people doing this.
Yes, and that's a good point, because it was a period of time before Thomas Jefferson, from the very first explorers in often collected plants in the 1600s and 1700s. But from the 1700s, mid-1700s on, there was a huge, just like, it's the New World, and we're going to collect and name every plant in it. And they thought they were new.
Right.
Of course, they were
weren't.
just naming things that had already had names by the indigenous people in the United States.
So another project that you have is really related to finding your other ancestors who were in the Columbus area and the ones who purchased land from the creeks?
So Samuel is one of those.
Okay.
Yes.
But this is a little bit later.
Yeah. So Samuel, that's right. Well, Samuel went to the University of Pennsylvania and he graduated from medical school, but he probably took courses with Benjamin Barton, who was botanist to Thomas Jefferson, and they were friends. And he trained Lewis and Clark on their trip. So Samuel probably took courses with these people because they were all teaching at the same time, and almost immediately he was recruited by Stephen Elliott, this botanist in Savannah area, to send him stuff. So in the meantime, his father and brother are all three slave owners and are farming in middle Georgia, and then moved down to Columbus, which was didn't even exist then. It was founded in 1828, and it's on the Chattahoochee River. Everybody's probably heard of Phoenix City, and Columbus is the twin city to Phoenix City, but
not everyone has.
no. Right. Well, and also when I say Columbus over on this side of the state,
Columbus,
everybody
Georgia.
thinks you're talking about Mississippi.
Yeah, we're talking about Columbus, Georgia, which I think, I think they're are they equidistant from, I feel like Columbus, Georgia and Columbus, Mississippi are just both off 82, but I don't know if that's.
Sort of.
Kind of,
Yeah.
sort of.
Columbus, Georgia's a little farther.
Yeah.
No, it's farther away, but they're just kind of at the same
You
latitude.
keep driving on 82.
No,
Yeah.
actually, I think Columbus, Mississippi is a little bit higher. Columbus, Georgia's below the fall line.
Oh, okay.
And so it's in the coastal plain, which is it's right at the fall line,
Okay.
which is like Tuscaloosa.
Tuscaloosa, yeah, very similar.
They build them there
Right.
on purpose.
Right.
And for people who don't know that, they built them there because that was the point to the steamships could come up and collect cotton and to bring it back down to the Gulf of Mexico.
They could navigate to there, and they didn't have to go through the shoals and
Right.
waterfalls
Right.
before they had locks.
Right. So one of the ways that my ancestors got land was to quote unquote, air quotes, buy it from the Creek Indians who were basically being sort of forced into conforming to white people's land ideas of property and land distribution. And so my direct ancestors, Samuel's brother, bought about 8 allotments that I know of, that I've got names of. There might be others. And then handed them over to his brother. His brother moved down to Columbus later on. So like one of the things I've been doing is writing that history of their land accumulation and just trying to bring the names of those people are all named in deeds.
Which people?
They're probably Muskogee Creeks, although I just realized that 2 of them were from a village named Hitchiti, which meant they probably spoke the Hitchiti language, which is a little bit different from Muskogee Creek. And that's another collateral ancestor I just was working on.
So like really every time you're studying these historical records, which is pretty much a combination of history and even like archivist, library science type things, every time you uncover one thing, you uncover something else.
Yeah.
So it kind of leaves you.
There's never an end. I don't ever have to worry about running out of topics.
And none of this is really written about. Not these individual people.
There are some. No, that's right. And
so your goal would really be, it's like for primary, in a way, like the first writing about it, the first historical writing about it.
Well, I mean,
not that there's not general things, but I'm just saying that.
Well, so my project is to write my most recent project is to write about Samuel Boykin's collections of plants and a few animals, like a little shrew-like animal and some caterpillars and stuff in the Chattahoochee Valley for a journal that I'm assistant editor for. And so that I'm trying to stay focused on that, although I have done a whole lot of other research because he also collected freshwater mollusks, and there was a meteorite in Forsyth County, Georgia, and he either went himself or sent somebody up there to collect pieces of it and mailed it to the Benjamin Silliman, who was the editor of a journal at Yale. I think he was at Yale, and that ended up getting written about. Forsyth, Georgia's meteorite.
Okay.
I mean, it's like it just goes everywhere.
But that is just like one of your projects, because then you've got multiple writing projects.
Yeah. So the other thing that I'm doing, and I'll do this little promotion about WikiTree, which is a free genealogy website for people who. It's a one tree for people who understand this and are interested. Family search. There's several different types of. There are several different websites for people who do genealogy. Ancestry is a website that has lots and lots of. Everybody has their own tree, and they work on it themselves. In Family Search, it's one tree that everybody works on, and in WikiTree, it's one tree that everybody works on. And I've recently kind of investigated WikiTree, and I really liked it. I liked the emphasis on sources and getting the information correct, which is not always the top priority in other websites. And so I have started doing what I call WikiTree reports of my ancestors, focusing on my tree, my little tree right now, and then it'll connect up with other people's work.
Yeah, that's good. So it's really like that type of research is collaborative in a way that. Yes. So you're all adding to like this body of knowledge that you didn't have before.
And that is a out of my comfort zone as far
to be collaborative.
To be collaborative, yeah. So and I have actually had to give myself a couple of pep talks about
like it's okay to work with other people.
Yeah, and also like to not be so. I mean, I like to get everything exactly right, and to let it kind of go for a while and then come back to it later. And do I really need to,
Does it have to be complete? Because it would be, and you want to be accurate so you're not misleading someone.
And there's accuracy, and then there's like absolute, this is the way I want it.
Right.
And there is also, like, I mean, with almost anything, especially, like, it's going to be someone's memory, something will be wrong, some stories be told. And you've talked a lot about some of your more, like, not as far back ancestors who just lied.
That's right.
And I think
I have a couple of generations of those.
Why don't you tell us one of the stories? So let's take a break and then we'll be back.
Hey, if you have a YouTube account, you can subscribe to our podcast. Just hit that subscribe button, and while you're at it, leave us a comment. We like hearing from you. Thanks.
Okay, we're back. And we're back with Rachel Dobson. If you're just joining us because, maybe we're broadcast somewhere, we're talking to Rachel about some of her research into genealogy and history and like the personal ancestry. Not sure how else to categorize it, but one of the things that when you were telling me some of these stories, you were saying, well, this is what the family told me, and this is but they were lying, and you would find out in your research. And so I think this happens all the time, but I thought you had an interesting story, so take it away, Rachel.
So like I was talking about, 18th, 19th century, but I mean, my great-grandmother, I'm sorry, she's not my great-grandmother, she's my grandmother's grandmother, so she's like great-great-grandmother, but
ways back there.
But she was very much like in my mind growing up, because Grandma always talked about Grandma Bryant this and Grandma Bryant that. We talked about her. We called her Martha Jane Peters all the time because her mother was Martha Jane Gilly. I mean,
she was like a character, a presence, definitely a presence in your life.
And she died in 1922 in Columbus. They moved up from Dale County, Alabama, southeast Alabama, to Columbus, Georgia, to work in the mill. My grandmother said nobody in my family ever worked in the mill, and then I come to find out everybody worked in the mill. That was some of the, but Martha Jane was interesting because she was born Martha Jane Bryan, except on her death certificate, her son, who was the informant, said her maiden name was Peters. And her father was a man named Tom Peters. So all these years we've looked for those, the Peters family and trying to find, do research. Well, Dale County had about at least three different courthouse fires. There are no records for a certain time period for Dale County. And a lot of my ancestors in her except for the census, the U.S. federal census, except for the 1890 census, which also burned in a fire, there are very few records. Like there are just some things that were pieced together later. And so it was not really, we suspected that something wasn't right. And when I say we, I learned a lot of my genealogy from my uncle, my mother's brother. So I learned a lot of what he knew and what he knew about that side of the family. And we always, for a while, we thought maybe Tom Peters was Native American. But when DNA came around, we realized that just, none of that worked. I mean, I'm just as white Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, Irish, Welsh, Scottish as you can get, and with some German and a little bit of French thrown in. But so I started doing work using Ancestry and using all these people looking at all these people that I was related to, and I finally figured out that she was actually a Bryan, and she married her second cousin. But for some reason, she never would. She disassociated herself from her father,
from the Bryans.
From the Bryans.
Okay.
And I'm not sure why. I have some theories, but there's no way that I'll ever know.
This is interesting. Just I didn't realize the last name was Bryan.
Yeah,
So,
and it's spelled Brian sometimes and Bryant other times.
Because my son-in-law's a Brian, so we'll have to go. I'll have to like explore this. Yeah, and
yes,
and
I did remember that.
Yeah, and my son-in-law's father was part of the Sons of the American Revolution, so they did trace some things back pretty far. So I wonder. Hey,
well, so this is, I mean, a little further back, that's a brick wall, and I don't know, because
of all these fires. So, and then, so.
Well,
but there was something else you had another story about.
So the other problem is that she married a man that there are no records for, except family history.
Mm-hmm.
It is if it weren't for my grandmother telling us that her grandfather was named Doc Bryant, and he was born around 1862, 63, she said. Who knows why she even said that. And that he died because he coming home from a bar, tavern, whatever you want to call it, public house. He got knocked off a horse in the middle of the night and broke his neck and died. And this was before the 1890 census, apparently, or at least before 1900.
Mm-hmm.
That's as narrow as we can get it. DNA-wise, there is a strong likelihood that Martha Jane, who we thought was a Peters, married her second cousin. Mm-hmm. This guy, that he was maybe her second cousin, mm-hmm. because he might be. I mean, this is my unexpert genetic genealogy study, but he might be related to these Bryants who were in Georgia and went out to Texas and then to California. And the only way that I think that mm-hmm. could be gotten into more is to get somebody who's a professional genetic genealogist.
And some of these things, it really would be difficult to figure out, and maybe impossible.
Hey, just a final plug for the Low Mill exhibit by Lorrie Lane and Steve Davis up in Huntsville. The exhibit will be closing on July 12th, at which time there will be a closing reception at 6 p.m., I believe. So if you're in the Huntsville area, make sure you check out Low Mill. And on the third floor, east side, you'll find their exhibit. It's really cool. It's Lorrie Lane's landscape paintings and Steve Davis's metal sculptural trees. Go see it. Thanks.
Okay. So what I'm asking about is the old record keeping. Sometimes they did get lost, but people are pretty good about writing things down and having paper copies. Now we have everything digitally, and so we think we have great records, but what do you think? How do you think future generations will see us?
I mean, I don't know, but the way it would be so easy for everything to just go up in smoke and disappear, and I don't have a lot of hope
because it's not printed out.
Because it would be so easy for a rogue power an EMP. I mean, just to disintegrate all the, and so if everything's electronic, there's no secondary, there's no backup for electronics.
Right.
They think people treat electronic stuff as the backup.
Right, mm-hmm. And I have multiple redundancies on all the work I'm doing, but most of those redundancies are digital as well.
Yeah.
So if an EMP were to go off for some reason.
Well, explain an EMP.
Electromagnetic pulse.
Okay.
I know about that because of Ocean's 11 or 12 or something.
Well, my sources for that might be a little more sophisticated, but probably not much.
But in any way, we rely a lot on the current technology for future generations, but we know how much they can change. Like, for instance, I have lots and lots of old tapes.
Yeah.
I don't have a place to play them.
Yeah. Well, and librarians a good librarian keeps one of every machine. Okay. And keeps it in working order. And that's kind of that's something.
And then you have to find someone who knows how to keep them in working order.
Yes. And so that's actually, so it always used to be Master of Library Science or Master of Library Studies. Now, generally, the best programs are Master of Library and Information Studies, which I learned almost everything besides how to run Microsoft Office. I learned almost all my other stuff in library school, like online platforms like librarything.com and Omeka, which is a database program, and just all these different. And the librarians are, they are keeping up.
They're keeping it up.
Librarians and archivists.
Right, they are keeping it together.
Yeah,
and so.
But I do think that it helps paper. I mean, actually, I collect paper because I'm afraid it's also going to be,
Obsolete.
Or at least difficult and expensive to come by.
Okay. So that's something to keep in mind, just like because we think, but even like I remember a lot of researchers use microfiche.
Yeah, and that's
that's,
you can
still see like old newspapers or like, but it's interesting to me how quickly things do get lost. If you are looking up some information about someone who, say, passed away right before Facebook and they don't have a social media presence, they don't really, you can Google their name and it's really difficult to find. You can find like an obituary if you look hard enough, but sometimes those disappear.
Yeah.
And so what we think of as like record keeping now, or even about ourselves, hopefully this podcast will carry on and will be known for, if we care about it.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking, so are you writing any, this is another question I don't really know, but because we've talked a lot about writing, but are you writing anything about your own life?
I have been off and on, but I really have to be in a certain kind of a mood to do it. And it's not the same headspace, I guess it's a better word. It's not the same headspace as writing about Samuel Boykin or writing a WikiTree report about an ancestor. It's really different. And do you keep like archival sort of information about your immediate family? I have lots and lots of photo albums,
and are they, if they're labeled?
And I have my father's files. Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of stuff.
So yes. Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's usually one person in a family that is like the archivist.
Yeah.
And I know my mother was giving me some things as she's going through some old photos and papers. They have, she has a closet in their house right now that's got like, it must have 300 photo albums and they're all labeled. It's not like just random. Now I do have them up to about 2006 and then everything went digital. And I used to, every season get my photos developed and then make the album and but of course the albums themselves can kind of eat the photography paper, so you can't worry about that. But then once it's digitized, I have everything on Google Photos. So I have, which is kind of cool because I have like years and years.
It's a lot
in my
more
phone.
Convenient.
It's very convenient, but I don't know what if that could go away.
And you're very quick at finding stuff.
Yeah, I kind of know it. Yeah, it'll help. But I just think that's how we remember things, how we think of our own history, and if you, I think when you're studying other family history, it does make you wonder about,
I think about it all the time, and there's no solution. You just have to keep. My house is way too small for what I need to be keeping. So.
Okay. Well, and there's a space issue, which for any of this. So, and I think our last thing I want to talk about is like your own visual art, because you are a trained visual artist and you spent years of your life at least, in the arts, in visual arts. So do you want to talk about any of your visual arts projects?
Well, I guess I'm not really working on anything right now because it's a similar headspace kind of. And I have in my house, because I live alone and people don't come visit me.
I did.
That's right. But and I'm not complaining at all. But I have one table for my work where I sit and work and do research all day long and eat. So like one time, and then this other table over here is got my art supplies on it and around it, and it's waiting. It's sitting there, waiting for me to come over and sit down and work on it. And I keep, every time I walk by, I promise that I'm going to sit down and do it.
But what's really interesting to me is that you retired about a year ago, and you're probably working as many hours now.
Yeah, more.
Okay, more
yeah.
hours now. And so I really I think this is an interesting concept for a lot of people who are still like, they've got jobs and they're like, oh, when I retire, I'll just sit by the pool. Right. But yeah, I mean.
That sounds like the worst thing in the world. I would be just bored out of my mind.
Which I feel like we just need to kind of get that idea across. It's fine if you do, and there are lots of people that's what they want to do.
Yes.
But there's a lot of people that like they need to be able to work. Like vacations for me are not fun. I would like to be able to do things
and not only work, but do the work that we've been wanting to do. I mean, because I think like what we were talking about the university or our own schooling.
Sure.
We also want to educate ourselves, but do it our way and do it I mean, I'm a big at my own pace. Like I'm learning German through Duolingo because my daddy tried to teach me, because he was a German teacher for 30 years. He tried to teach me and that didn't work out. But I can go at my own pace and my own speed. I'm actually a really slow reader and it's hard for me to kind of incorporate knowledge into my brain. So, and I've always been that way, and it's taken me many years to kind of just be okay with that. And
and so I think that's one of the good things about getting older, is that you know yourself better and you're like more kind to yourself, because you're not like comparing yourself to what I should be, who I should be. You're really, is just who I am.
And also just
it's okay.
like say no to other people who are trying to get you to do it a different way.
That's right.
Because there's a lot of that.
Which in Cheryl's doing the same type of research, really, is that at her own pace.
Yeah.
And then and my painting is similar. I mean, so and I've got the writing projects back there that I guess I'll get to one of these days, but maybe if I don't, it's okay too.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing, is just to be happy with what you're doing.
Right.
And if you're not, then
just
do something else, figure it out.
And so, listeners, if you are, get to retirement or you're thinking about it, just kind of think of all the ways that you can like really enjoy your life. And it doesn't have to be, I think there really is kind of a stereotype of now you have to go on a trip, you have to do this, or you have to sit there. And, there's a lot of, and you do what you want to do. Like, that's really.
If you're, as long as you're able to.
Yes. Yeah, and some people can't, but if you're able to and really have that extra time, this is when, you can really go into something that you've just been waiting to do for a while. So.
And I do like to watch my shows.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
We're gonna go watch our shows.